Tonight on Sightings, vampires. Are they real or the stuff that nightmares are made of?
The best thing about being a vampire is the taste of the blood.
Our researchers hunt for evidence in human skeletal remains and prove that vampires still exist. Then, they were ordinary people until they had frightening visions of real-life murders.
It was as if someone had put a picture right in front of me.
Fluke or psychic phenomena that could solve our most horrifying crimes. And our ongoing Bermuda Triangle investigation uncovers a startling piece of evidence that may unlock the mystery of missing Flight 19.
This telegram is certainly a genuine telegram of the period.
At that point, it started to appear.
They had large, dark eyes, claw-like hands.
I began sensing and knowing and feeling.
I do believe in life after death. I mean, I've been there.
We have not scratched the surface of what the mind can do.
It's a connection with the unknown.
Just about everything we know about vampires was created almost 100 years ago by Bram Stoker in his classic Gothic novel Dracula. It's been the inspiration for countless stories and movies about a fictional character with a taste for human blood. But today in the United States, some people believe that vampires actually exist. We think of vampires as part of Eastern European folklore or the result of Hollywood conjuring, not as the stuff of small-town America. But in the late 18th century, belief in the undead led to bizarre rituals designed to keep the newly deceased from coming back to prey on the living. The Connecticut countryside is dotted with old cemeteries. In Griswold, a dark secret lay dormant for nearly 2 centuries and has only recently been unearthed. In Washington, at the prestigious Walter Reed Army Medical Center, remains uncovered in Griswold were analyzed by Paul Sedzik, a curator at the National Museum of Health and Medicine.
I was given a call by the state archaeologist in Connecticut to help identify and analyze some skeletal material that was found at this site in Griswold, Connecticut. What happened was some kids had found a couple of skulls laying at the bottom of a little ravine, and they brought them to the police, and the police called the medical examiner. The medical examiner did some research into the records in that time period and came up with vampire activity or vampire cults in the 18th and 19th century.
Archaeologists probed the graves for mutilated corpses, the telltale signs of suspected vampires. The next step in verification was determining the cause of death.
Pretty evident to see the cause of death. In the skeleton from Connecticut, the vampire skeleton, there's evidence of tuberculosis in some of the upper left ribs. And here we can see evidence here, this whitish area that we're seeing close to the articulation with the vertebrae.
Tuberculosis played a major role in the vampire folklore of the 1800s. It was believed that those who died of TB could come back and infect the living. So a ritual developed to ensure that a corpse's eternal resting place really was eternal.
What they actually did was take the bones here in the chest and jumble them up like someone had just taken their hand and kind of moved it around in that fashion. They then took the 2 femora, the upper leg bones, crossed this one here and this other one on top of it, over across like that. They then took the skull and placed that right in this area, and then they closed the crypt back up.
The graves were opened anywhere from 2 weeks to a year after burial. Graves of dearly departed loved ones or anyone who died of tuberculosis.
What floored me is just that people could actually believe that someone dying of tuberculosis could actually cause the death of loved ones. And there are accounts in New England, especially of men going into the graves of their daughter and removing their hearts and burning them, and you know, fathers doing it to sons, sons doing it to fathers. I mean, very close family units. There were probably lots of people attending these exhumations and killing of vampires, and when you do read them, there can be upwards of 300 or 400 people. The whole town would probably turn out. You know, it's a major social event. Digging up wives, husbands, sons, daughters, and trying to kill them again. I mean, that's something that we couldn't even conceive of today. I couldn't imagine going and digging up the grave of my daughter and trying to kill her again. I know there's something that's completely would never enter my mind.
In many parts of America, you can still hear chilling tales of vampires today. In Los Angeles, professor of folklore and author Noreen Dresser researches living vampires.
Very often, the act of drinking blood is a prelude to sex. People who call themselves vampires. Uh-huh. A corpse supposed to come to life at night and leave its grave and suck the blood of sleeping people. If a person wants to dress in black and sleep during the daytime and be awake at night and walk through the graveyards and listen to Gothic music, and that person's not hurting anyone, including the fact that that person might want to drink someone's blood and someone is willing to give it to them, I don't see where that's harming anyone.
I'd say the best thing about being a vampire is the taste of the blood and being with someone who trusts you and will let you drink their blood.
Katrina is proof that vampire practices are real and still occur today.
There are certain well-known criminals, for example, Richard Ramirez and Ted Bundy, who in reports, there were just little side notes that they did drink blood from their victims, but that was never presented as the main motivation for committing their crimes.
I would never do anything to a child or to an animal. This is something that I've only done with a consenting adult. You know, they have to be willing to do this, and anyone that I've ever done anything like this with actually has enjoyed it.
Some vampires attempt to take blood here from the carotid artery. However, that's rather clumsy and it's also quite dangerous. So this is not really used as often as taking it from the arm.
I can use an instrument like this, which is a medical scalpel. It's very sharp. It can be sterilized with alcohol, so there won't be any infection, and it's painless. Blood is an acquired taste. The best place is somewhere on the arms or the hands, and I'll just, continue drinking until the wound stops bleeding. Sometimes this leads to a relationship where they say, well, that was kind of interesting. I enjoyed it. Would you like to do it again sometime?
You could be attacked, mugged, robbed, shot, killed on the freeway. I mean, our life is so fraught with dangers and fears that it's a lot more satisfying to focus on something scary when we know what all the rules of that scariness are.
Why does the myth of vampires still persist? Perhaps it's because we are still plagued by diseases and our lives are still precarious as they were in ancient times. But unlike the rest of us, a vampire never gets sick, never grows old, and never dies.
Coming up, they were ordinary people until they had frightening visions of real-life murders.
It was as if someone had put a picture right in front of me.
And later, what really happened to Flight 19 over the Bermuda Triangle? Startling new evidence may prove that the airmen survived.
There are people who have extraordinary powers of perception and make their living as professional psychics. But tonight we'll meet ordinary people who suddenly, and for no apparent reason, have one striking psychic vision. For them, that single clairvoyant moment becomes a living nightmare. August 1990. The usually laid-back town of Gainesville, Florida was paralyzed with fear. 5 violent murders within 40 hours. 5 college students mutilated in their apartments. And no arrests. 2 years later, the case remains open. Over 1,000 miles away, a successful businessman who has never been to Gainesville begins to experience nightmarish visions.
Well, I walked out to the barn and about 9:30 at night and was taking care of the horses down there. And on my way back from the barn, I just happened to look up into the sky and I saw a window with a silhouette of a person in there. A few weeks went by, I had a premonition that I was going to meet this killer from Gainesville. The very next day after the premonition, I did meet a gentleman from Gainesville.
For the past year, visions of a murder have haunted a man who's never had a psychic experience. The images are so real, so frightening, that he's asked to remain anonymous and be referred to as John.
One morning, I just happened to see this vision of a dog. I seen the head of a dog on the door. And after looking at it more thoroughly, I could actually see the dog's body.
After a couple of weeks, John began to see more and different images in the door. A young girl, the state of Florida, an athletic field, a deer, a sickle. The images gave John no answers, only questions.
What is the average person to do when they start having what they believe are intuitive impressions about, say, a crime, a murder, a series of murders?
The spirit who was coming to me was a girl, a young girl. And I had the feeling that this spirit was a girl of about 20 or so years old, and she was one of the victims.
John wanted to go to the police, but he was afraid that if he told them what he'd seen, they might make him a suspect. That is exactly what happened to California housewife Etta Smith 10 years earlier.
It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was listening to a radio broadcast while at work. And they said that they had found the lady's vehicle in Pacoima, I think on a dead-end street, and that they were making a house-to-house search for her. And as soon as they said house-to-house search and that thought registered, it was as if someone said to me, "She's not in a house." I saw a picture. It was as if someone had put a picture right in front of me.
Etta drove to a police station and revealed her startling insight to a homicide detective.
I explained exactly. It'd be the right-hand side with a dirt path to her, a hill behind her. He suggested that I show him on a wall map where this area was, and that's when we discovered that it was Lopez Canyon. I don't think I was thinking right, but I knew I had to go see for myself. I knew the police would never tell me, and I was afraid maybe they wouldn't look.
Within minutes, Etta saw her vision become a horrifying reality.
As my eyes traveled further across the object, at the end of the object were white nurse's shoes.
On her way back down the canyon, she reported her grisly find to a ranger. Shaken by the experience, Etta then went home. Not long after, there was a knock at her door.
She went home, and then subsequently she was brought down by the police department and arrested for the murder of this woman.
It took 9 years and a jury trial before Etta was exonerated for doing what she thought was right. But how do you explain the source of her psychic experience, or John's startling visions? Somehow, John had to come to terms with the gruesome visions that had been haunting him. Psychic psychologist Keith Harari accompanied him to Gainesville to help him on his journey. They visited the murder scenes in search of clues to the mystery.
When I was out having these visions, I would ask for something that I can only the police would know, or that she could tell me. One of them being that what was the murder weapon used, and she gave me a vision of a sickle, and the sickle could be found in an area behind a football field. And I also envisioned a tree and also a symbol or of deer or some type of animal.
One victim attended classes at the Gainesville Teaching Zoo, where not only are there deer, but a parking lot under construction on top of what used to be an athletic field.
We got a tremendous amount of contacts from people who believe very strongly that they had information from a psychic nature or paranormal nature that they wanted to relay to the investigators. They wanted to do so primarily to benefit the investigation.
I'm just an average person, okay, having a vision, and that with that, they would look upon me as wacky.
The dead tree was the sign John was looking for. And with the supervision of Keith Harari, he began an intensive search for the murder weapon.
Things that have happened to me all pertain to this Gainesville killing, and this spirit that has come to me is one of the victims, and I feel it so strongly that I just can't let it go. I have to follow this through as she wants me to do. I feel that she wants to put an end to this and put this person in jail. And I just can't let it go like that.
Life is a mystery. and it's full of mysteries, and it's full of situations in which you don't always get closure. I mean, the healthiest thing to do in this case is to say, well, I don't know, I checked it out, I didn't find anything, go back to one's ordinary life and have a good life, open to the possibility that sometimes things happen that you can't explain.
On June 9th, 1992, while this story was being shot, a new development. A man named Danny Rolling was indicted for murder in the Gainesville case. But Danny Rolling is not the man in John's visions. John believes there's a second murderer who has not yet been caught. And in fact, the Gainesville Police Department admits there may be a second murderer at large. The investigation continues, and for John, so does the waking nightmare of his psychic visions.
Coming up next, did the Bermuda Triangle take Flight 19, or was it all a government cover-up?
They were all lying, all of them.
On a recent episode of Sightings, we told you the story of Flight 19, a squadron of Navy fighters that vanished in the treacherous Bermuda Triangle after World War II. And now, 47 years after the planes disappeared, Sightings has received exclusive information that reveals a bizarre new twist in the fate of Flight 19.
I doubt if anyone will ever be able to solve this.
You know, they were all lying.
East of Florida, north of Puerto Rico, south of Bermuda. These are the parameters for a region some believe is a portal at the rim of reality. This is the heart of the legendary Bermuda Triangle, the last stop on Earth for many who have dared venture within its boundaries. For the last half-century, men, women, and children have mysteriously disappeared here without a trace. And the Bermuda Triangle does not give up its secrets. But now, one strange Western Union telegram may reveal the fate of at least one victim of the deadly triangle. Nearly a half-century ago, on December 5th, 1945, the Bermuda Triangle claimed some of America's finest, men who had survived World War II. At 2 p.m., a squadron of Navy Aztec bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale on a routine 3-hour training mission over the Atlantic Ocean. At 3:45 p.m., Lieutenant Charles Taylor radioed in a distress call. He seemed to be disoriented. "Both my compasses are out," he said. "I'm over land, but it's broken." Sporadic broadcasts continued for the next 3 hours. Then, abruptly, all 5 planes lost radio contact with the tower.
When we couldn't make contact with Taylor, things became very frustrating. And then like when one thing went wrong, it seemed like everything went wrong.
The Navy launched a massive search and rescue operation, sweeping hundreds of nautical miles night and day. But no trace of the squadron was ever found. No debris, no bodies, no oil slick. 14 men and 5 bombers vanished off the face of the earth.
You know, your mind plays all kinds of tricks, and you think all kinds of things, and you just can't come up with a complete answer.
A strange rumor surfaced that the planes had not crashed into the ocean and that the crewmen were still alive. This rumor was based on the theory that Flight 19 was not on a routine training mission, but instead was part of a top-secret Navy intelligence project. The Navy was supposedly testing a new electromagnetic device believed to be more important than the atom bomb. This device was thought to be capable of making any metallic object and the crew on board invisible. It was called the Philadelphia Experiment. 50 years after Flight 19 disappeared, a haunting clue has surfaced. On December 26, 1945, 2 weeks after the disappearance, Joseph Payanesso received a telegram signed by his brother George, one of the crewmen who had vanished in the Bermuda Triangle. The telegram read, "You have been misinformed about me. Am very much alive. Georgie." To check its authenticity, a Western Union official and a document expert examined the telegram. They both verified it is not a fake.
This telegram is certainly a genuine telegram of the period, and as for the contents, I leave that to someone else to judge.
When I saw the telegram and read it, I confirmed my suspicions that he was still alive. I believe that the telegram that was sent is real because of the way he signed it. They covered up something.
The top secret report on Flight 19 has recently been declassified. The document states that the flight, quote, disappeared for reasons or causes unknown. Does the Navy know more than they're admitting?
I was very disillusioned with their whole procedure. I wrote hundreds and hundreds of letters, which they shifted me from one naval base to another and to one captain to another. They declared him dead due to drowning. And I asked them to tell me, how did they come to that conclusion? And they said it was within their power, and that was it.
The Navy continues to deny the existence of any project like the Philadelphia experiment. They also deny that any of the men on Flight 19 survived.
They were all lying, all of them.
Were the men of Flight 19 victims of a Navy experiment gone horribly awry? Or were they caught in the deadly vortex known as the Bermuda Triangle? Both possibilities are frightening to contemplate. Thanks for joining us. For Sightings, I'm Tim White. Good night.
Next time on Sightings, psychic healing. Is it the ultimate cure-all?
I've seen people who have cancer no longer have cancer.
I was healed forever and ever.
Psychic healing on the next Sightings.
Sunday, from the producers of Married with Children, it's the series premiere of Rachel Gunn RN, right after In Living Color. Later that night, the guys on Down the Shore have a sexy new next-door neighbor.
She's trash.
Well then, I'd like to take out the trash.
It's an all-new Down the Shore, Sunday. Now, stay tuned for Hidden Video, next.